Hi everybody, welcome to Real Product Strategy, the show where we take your favorite fictional products from your favorite TV shows, analyze their competitive positioning in the market, and craft them a long-term strategy for company growth. I'm your host, product management, business strategy professional, Tom Prime, and let's see what's on our airwaves today. Today we're going to talk about the banana stand from Arrested Development. Let's take a deep dive into the banana stand, the mall snack industry, the challenges of the food industry in general, and then we'll go in and break down and understand why there's always money in the banana stand and why there could be and there should be a whole lot more. So, Bluth's banana stand was created in 1953 by George Bluth on the Oceanside Wharf Boardwalk on Balboa Island in Newport Beach. Throughout the series, the stand gets destroyed and rebuilt multiple times, and it simply serves frozen bananas that are dipped in chocolate and maybe covered in nuts. Nothing too crazy. Throughout the series, there's always one common line in regards to the banana stand that comes all the time, and it is, there's always money in the banana stand. So even though George Bluth meant that the walls of the banana stand were lined with $250,000 in cash, George probably could have been talking about something much greater than that. So for starters, let's break down the banana stand and what its job to be done is. So in product, the biggest thing is jobs to be done theory and understanding what an individual hires a given product to do. Right. So going off that, when we look at the banana stand at its core, right? So as a consumer, I hire a banana, a frozen banana, because I want a nice, cool, refreshing treat while I'm on the boardwalk at an affordable price. Going off of that, the banana stand throughout the show has also been showing the bananas to be offered at $1. So it's relatively affordable, and it's obviously a quick, easy snack you can get on the boardwalk, off the boardwalk, and it's great. Also, when you think about it, it's vegetarian, it's relatively healthy, so there's not a whole lot of guilt in there. The only guilty part, I guess, would be the chocolate, but between the bananas and nuts, probably not too bad for you. And yeah, it's quick to get, because obviously all these items are pre-frozen, they're just handed to you, and they're good to go. So, let's break down some of these operations of the banana stand. So, looking at it, it is, in the show, it's shown as a cash-only business. That probably could have been done for a variety of reasons, but in the current era of digital payments, obviously this would likely be expanded to accept card and crypto payments as well. There's a small footprint, so the stand really only needs to be occupied by one person. However, it's shown throughout the show to up to 3 people, but as we can see, it's in this image right here, it's very crowded in the banana stand. So really, it really only needs one person to operate. There's obviously benefits with only having one employee, one person on the payroll, makes it a lot more easy. And then the ingredients are really simple. It's just bananas, chocolate, and nuts. And then you buy your serving supplies in bulk, and bananas are quickly peeled, dipped, coated, and frozen, not really requiring any additional food prep beyond getting these things put in the freezer. Right? And then obviously because of that, these items can be served rather quickly, which is really exciting. This has a ton of advantages versus a traditional restaurant model. So one, because there's so few ingredients, there's a minimum amount of different customizations you can do here. So it's a standardized product and it can be served rather quickly. Also, because all these items are commodities for the most part, there's little to no variation in prices when you're buying new supplies, but in general, prices are generally relatively low. Because of all these items are served frozen and are prepped frozen, there's minimal waste unless you have some kind of power outage, right? That would obviously be a different story. In addition, a store requires only one employee to run. So there's a lot of advantages to that we will see in a little bit when we actually go through a rough P&L by comparing the Bluth banana stand to 3 other real franchises and their estimated financial burdens. And then obviously the speed. And as we'll see in a little bit, the food industry is based on low margins, high volume. So the more volume you can churn out, the more profitable you'll be. So there's a lot of advantages here because this can be served quickly, you can serve more at a higher volume. So let's go into some of our pricing. Before we go into our P&Ls, the first thing we can think about is the banana stand price. The banana price is roughly $1. I think low is 50 cents, high is $1. Their high is $1.25. If we look at the modern snack mall snack industry. We're talking about pretzels, cupcakes, cookies, cinnamon rolls. We're talking about, a variety of others. We'll often see throughout menus that the base cost is $6. That is the bare minimum. Your simply salted pretzel, your chocolate chip cookie. Across the board, it seems to be between $4 and $6 at the absolute minimal end. So, with that in mind, I've made actually a profit and loss statement comparing rough operational costs of the banana stand, from breaking down what it takes to make a Bluth banana versus all of our other competitors, what it takes to staff them, approximate rents, all these little details to determine how profitable the banana stand actually is in the show. So as we can see, we've taken 3 pastry chains, and basically this first one is a very profitable chain, very common throughout malls throughout the United States. Pastry 2 is the same, operates at a little lower margin, but has creates an item with a lot more ingredients involved. And then pastry chain 3 is similar to pastry chain 1, similar items and similar prices. There's a few subtle tweaks here and there though, but we do get a lot of similar values here. So going off of that, what we will see in general is that food costs obviously matter here. Let's go break down exactly how we got a lot of these costs and a lot of these numbers here. So revenue, we looked up actual estimated returns from these franchises. What does ABC Pastry Chain return in revenue every year? What is their price per unit? What is the price of their cheapest item, or the item we assume is the most commonly sold? Based off of that, how many rough units they would have sold if they only sold that item, and then we do a breakdown on how many average units that's per day, assuming 360 operational days, and how many units are sold an hour, assuming 12 hours of operation. And we do that across the board here. So we've actually taken, again, these numbers, these top line revenue numbers are available by simple Google search, not too crazy. They might be, I altered them slightly from what the numbers returned as, but essentially they're the same. Food cost. What we did for food cost is we straight up looked up copycat recipes, and we took copycat recipes and I looked up the ingredients and I broke them down, how much it cost per serving, how much it would cost for each item. So that's how we get the food cost for pastry chef or cheap pastries from companies 1 and 3, and then the expensive baseline pastry for company number 2, and the Bluth banana stand. Obviously those numbers, when you're buying in bulk, you're getting better pricing, so the numbers here would be shown probably on the higher end, but it's I would imagine it's pretty close and pretty similar here. So going off that rent, we see rent numbers here across the board. So roughly throughout the United States, the average mall rent per location is between $2,000 to $10,000. So splitting the difference, seeing an average of $6,000 a month would be a logical rent here. It could be more, could be less. But again, we're gonna say $6,000 a month. Utilities, we just added a baseline $1,000 a month. This information wasn't readily available, so $1,000 just seemed to make a lot of sense. And with that being said, we said $500 a month for non-food supplies like cups, napkins, cleaning supplies, things like that. So that was our uniforms. So we had that as well. And here's an even $500 a month across the board. Payroll, we took numbers from each franchise's recommended staffing numbers. Pastry chains 1 and 3 both recommended between 5 and 7 people working at a given time. Pastry chain 2 did not recommend a single number. However, they recommended the owner working the location themselves. And that's, as we could see through our analysis, probably due to its lower margin, give or take. And then we have franchise fee. Franchise fee, again, was pulled directly from those companies' sites and from publicly available information. From there, we calculated profit and profit margin. So our estimated profit numbers were actually, throughout this, were pretty close to the estimates these franchise companies were actually sending out. So we're gonna say a lot of this other information checks out above it, and then going off of that estimated initial capital start, I did research on this one as well, pulling directly from the franchises. And this is their average estimate of how much it takes to create each location. And then it's basically simple math based on the return. We determined how many years it would take based on the initial investment to officially break even. All right, let's go look at these first three chains and what we see really stands out here. So the first thing is food cost. Obviously, if you have higher food cost margin items, this becomes a significant burden. So right here, traditionally in food, it's basically food cost times 3 is how you get your end price. However, that's not how all work. all franchises, all companies work, but the traditional metric is food cost times 3. But again, as we can see here, based on the math we did, ingredient per recipe per item, we get a much different number, and that's also what leads to this general profitability across these chains. In addition, let's go to our ingredients list right here. So as we can see here, cheap pastry 1 and 3, total food cost $1.05, but only has a handful of ingredients, right? And all of these are relatively low cost, with the exception of the butter. And this comes out to and it comes out to $1.05, which is a really good number, right? And so if we look at our expensive pastry number 2, this pastry company has a lot more ingredients, a lot more different prep times, different toppings, things like that. But each of the ingredients, cost quite a bit. Sugar was surprisingly high. You had butter was up there as well, but you have a lot of higher elevated costs, partially because of the amount of ingredients here. I mean, obviously you have a penny here, you have 13 cents there, you have 11 cents here, but if you have 10, 11, 12 ingredients, that number is going to add up rather quickly. Now if we look at the banana stand, 3 ingredients, very cheap, makes it much more easier, less likely to waste them, and it basically makes it a lot more profitable. So going off of that, let's look at some of our costs. So rent is another big hurdle here, because all these locations require a similar footprint. Because essentially what rent is, if I have to pay $6,000 a month in rent, as a business, I at the least have to generate $6,000 in profit or $6,000 in revenue to pay off that rent, right? I have to exceed that burden to start making a profit. So rent for a restaurant owner and for a low margin business like the food industry, this becomes a critical threshold. So these obviously all going to be in that same factor is a concern here. In addition, payroll. Now, I have a lot of family members who work in the food industry. I've actually worked in the food industry myself in college, and I've had a lot of experience here with the ins and outs of this industry, and it's how I know it so well. But if you have to have 5 to 7 people on staff at a given time to staff this, I assumed here that the average wage would be $20 an hour. And I emphasize that there's probably some at 10, probably some at 11, there's probably at 12, but you also have management. When management costs a lot more, when you're looking at I think $50,000, $60,000 a year, that if you broke that down to an hourly wage, we're simply going to say the average cost per worker is $20 an hour. So even if we look at it that way, our pastry chain here, even though they're generating $832,000, it costs them $432,000 in payroll, which ends up being about 52% of your costs are just in payroll. And I was in some of these other chains, pastry chain too, because of its low margin here and its high food cost, they can't really afford to have additional people on the payroll. So in here, I'll actually lowered this here to the equivalent of having 1.5 people on payroll. So it's quite minimal. But even if and actually on the page for a lot of this, for this particular franchises, they recommend the owner's work, and their actual estimate, bringing down a profit to the bottom line, comes at about $90,000 a year with the owner working. So that is kind of right in line here with this 103. But either way, this payroll becomes another burden. Again, back to pastry chain 3, labor intensive. Food cost is low, but it's labor intensive, and again, those fees take a huge chunk out of that bottom line. And then the franchise fee is based off a percentage of gross revenue, so that kind of comes with the territory here. So some is 8%, we have 8.5 here, and we have 6 here. So yeah, as we could see, based on this rough P&L, the two biggest burdens here with these franchises are, number one is payroll and employee cost. And it's unfortunate because a lot of these people work really hard, but the problem is there's just not the money in it there for them. It just becomes really tough, and a lot of these franchises that are required on a lot of labor, they just can't generate that revenue. In addition, the rent footprint, that is obviously $72,000 a year. If you look at it at some of these other chains, it eats about, across the board, probably on average roughly 10% of your revenue. I mean, that's also a huge burden to overcome, right? And that's something we have to consider. So the advantages of the Bluth banana stand. So if we elevated the Bluth bananas price in line with the rest of the mall snack industry, and we sold numbers at similar scale, actually in our first example, 20,000 less units per than our next common chain at $2 less. Because our food cost is low, our food cost here is fractional compared to all the other main franchises, and we're only out paying 76 cents an item and charging $4. So again, huge advantage in food costs. But again, because we have a smaller footprint, because it is a one-person stand, our rent total, I brought it down to $4,000. I mean, it could easily be $2,000, could be $3,000, but I put it at $4,000 simply because it's less, and that is again lowers our burden to profitability, or lowers our threshold towards profitability, which is huge. But then also, most importantly, that payroll number. We only have to have a single employee run the banana stand at all times. So because that number is naturally low, obviously we don't have this burden of that comes across the rest of the industry right here with significant labor cost. With that being said, based on our estimates and looking at the food cost, if we sold 80,000 bananas a year at $4 a banana, we actually bring $87,000 to the bottom line at a 27% margin, which is astronomical. It is so much better than any of these any options. And then also going off of that, on the high end, if we sold similar to one of these higher end pastry chains that sell $6 and $6.50 pastries and at similar volume, we are looking at $457,000 to the bottom line at a 61% margin. So going off of that, when George Bluth was saying there's always money in the banana stand, there is always money in the banana stand. Which is just crazy to think about. And then our final estimate, we kind of split the difference here, saying $4 banana at 100,000 units per year. We're still looking at $147,000 in profit, which is still $30,000 a year more profitable than our most popular pastry chain at a 36.75% margin, which is insane. So understanding that and looking at the banana stand and everything, what does it take to cost and start? So if we look at our first three main pastry chains, we're looking at our first one, which is our most popular chain. I would emphasize on its popularity. It would still take 2.62 years to recover its initial investment. Pastry chain number 2 takes 5.33 years to recover that initial investment. And pastry chain 3 takes 4.22 years to recover that initial investment. However, because of based on looking at the construction of the banana stand, pricing out equipment from a chocolate melter to a freezer to rough construction costs of a wooden shack that sells bananas on its own, we estimated the initial startup cost here to be $75,000. This could be low, it could be high. Again, it's just an estimate. But at that estimate, which, to be honest with you, when I was putting it together, I thought it was a little high, mainly because I was trying to source some of the best materials to raise that cost. You're at these margins, you are still recovering your initial investment in less than a year in all three scenarios, which, if you ask me, is absolutely mind-blowing. So, looking at that, right, a couple things we can get here. Margins matter. Obviously, we have they affect what you can bring to the bottom line. Offering at selling at volume also affects how you can bring to the bottom line, and rent is a huge burden. So the Bluth company, the Bluth Banana Stand, as we identified, addresses all three major concerns in this industry, in growing and scalability for these restaurants, which makes it a really exciting opportunity for the Bluth family, right? And so when George Bluth is saying there's always money in the banana stand, it could line the walls with $250,000 in cash, he could do so very easily and could easily do it again, time and time again. Going off of that, what's even more mind-blowing about the show is why on earth they didn't try to franchise this out. If it was proven to be a truly popular item and they could open multiple locations, open Banana Stand 2 on a different boardwalk, or open a couple others on different places, and all shown significant profitability, this could have been, the Bluth Banana Stand could easily be the massive, colossal hit on boardwalks everywhere throughout warmer climates throughout the United States. Even if they were to operate on a seasonal basis, they would probably be extremely profitable, understanding that they need less than a year to recover that initial investment. Just a lot of exciting things here that truly identify that there's always money in the banana stand. And if I am George Bluth, if I am the Bluth family, or I'm Michael, if I'm Michael Bluth, what I am doing is I'm taking the banana stand, because there's always money in the banana stand. I'm getting out of the real estate business completely, and I am focusing myself on the rapid expansion of Bluth Banana Stands nationwide, growing the overall Bluth family business exponentially through a high margin, high volume take at a mall snack. Thank you very much. My name is Tom Prime, everybody, and stay tuned for our next episode.